Chapter 3, Mr. Personality. The 1930s was a decade of pageants and contests that I like to believe is not so long ago when it seemed like every mother in America was marching their children down the boardwalk at the world-famous Atlantic City Baby Contest, or when throngs of beautiful young ladies vied for recognition in the endless stream of beauty contests held by every town, county, and state, not to mention Miss America. In the fall of 1934, when I was 5 years old, my mother learned of a talent contest for children held at the Willard Theater in Woodhaven, Queens, just a short distance from our home. I was already a precocious kid and beginning to enjoy some success on the modeling circuit, so the opportunity to step up to a stage performance seemed only natural. It was also what Mom really wanted. The Willard Theater was a long way from Broadway, but I still remember her excitement the night that I stood at a microphone on the Willard stage reciting a poem with the title, Why I Love My Mother. Frankly, I wasn't too impressed with my performance, but I did come home the winner. The Willard Prize sent me across town for the final round at the Loewy State, the beautiful old theater on 44th Street and Broadway in Manhattan, which is still among the most prominent theaters in New York City. The same contest that I won in Queens had been held in all 5 boroughs of New York, and the winners got to perform in the finals at the Manhattan Loewy's. I still remember that night, just 5 years old, in October of 1934. I arrived at the theater, smartly dressed in short pants, blazer, and a little blue pea cap that I wore proudly as I stepped on stage for the big show. When my turn came, I walked out to the microphone and recited the same poem. As a matter of fact, I was still a little uncertain about reciting poetry. Other kids were singing and dancing, while all I did was recite my poem. But Mom knew better than me, and once again I came out on top. Now I was the proud winner of New York's Loewy's MGM Screen and Voice Contest for Children in 1934. The most extraordinary part, and something of which I was pretty much oblivious, was that 2 of the contest judges were Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady of the United States, and Fiorello LaGuardia, the mayor of New York City. I don't recall actually meeting them at the time. The finals were recorded, and it may have been that the First Lady and the mayor viewed the film privately before making their choice. Anyway, my mother was very excited. We now had our first brush with the world beyond Kew Gardens. Eleanor Roosevelt and Mayor LaGuardia were already legendary figures, and I'm still grateful to them both for selecting the kid with nothing more than a navy pea cap and a poem about his mom. In retrospect, I also find it remarkable that the contest was filmed. Today, everything is filmed. At a moment's notice, we turned our telephones into video recorders and stored them as electronic files. But this was 1934. The talkies, beginning with Al Jolson's The Jazz Singer in 1927, were only 7 years old. It would take another 5 years before the world would know The Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind. To make an actual sound film of the contest meant that it was something they took seriously, no doubt as a promotional piece for MGM and Loewy's. Winning the top prize was also a nice resume item, one mother was planning to use in the years ahead as she continued her relentless drive to make me an entertainer. The personality contest was also important in showing that I had no fear of the stage. Perhaps this experience at such an extremely young age helped remove all the specter of stage fright, a condition that haunts many established actors as well as those who might otherwise have tried their hand at acting. At an early age, speaking in front of a large crowd seemed as natural to me as talking at the dinner table. I also learned to memorize. I was too young to read, and so the poem was recited by heart. Since then, I've never had a problem memorizing lines. I recall years later riding on the subway to performances of I Remember Mama, reading and memorizing the entire scripts before the train pulled into Penn Station. Of course, acting on soap operas also requires a good memory. For 2 years in the 1960s, I played a character on The Young Dr. Malone, and each day we were handed a script which had to be ready for the next day, and my role was relatively small. Memory block is fatal to an actor. I've seen it end a number of careers, and it's usually sad. especially if the lapses are associated with aging. In over 75 years on stage, I've been lucky to be free of both stage fright and memory lapse, and I suspect that at least a part of that good fortune is the result of standing in front of several thousand people at the Loews Theatre and spouting off that poem about my mother. For me, it was the right way to launch my stage career. After all, it was my mother who made it all possible. I hope that as she sat there among all those thousands of people, watching her little boy talk about how much he loved her, that she knew it was much more than just a recitation for the contest. Like most kids my age, I loved the Our Gang comedies. Remember them? They were in the films Spanky, Farina, Buckwheat Pete, The Black-Eyed Dog, and the whole gang were taking the entertainment world by storm in the 1930s. This wasn't the more familiar television show The Little Rascals, which began in 1955, but the film shorts, which years before the advent of television were among the most popular shows in the country. Mom decided that I should get in on it. As always, she shot right for the top. At the time, Laurel and Hardy were the biggest comedy team in the country, and Mom discovered that Stan Laurel was connected to the producer of Our Gang, Hal Roach. So in 1934, when I was 6 years old, she wrote a letter directly to Stan Laurel asking if he could help me get an audition for the part. She included some of my modeling pictures. To our great surprise, Stan Laurel responded. Among my most prized mementos is the letter that he wrote to my mother in 1934. In it, he described me as a cute little tyke, and at the end predicted, "There are great things waiting for you." 75 years later, I still have that letter in a frame in my home. And as it turned out, Stan Laurel was exactly right. Great things were waiting, although there would be many twists and turns along the way.